we'd been talking about for weeks. Camping. Read scary stories, pig out on junk food. We could pretend we were lost campers in a storm, and that something terrible lurked just outside our tent. So we pitched the tent, uninnuendoily. My fingers were completely numb from the cold, and I had to pause every once in a while to breathe some warmth back into them. When I finally found it, without thinking, I just yanked it open, not considering appeared almost blue. She had her back turned to me, her flowing hair reaching down to her waist. "Melissa!" I yelled. The girl turned around slowly. She was bathed in blood, head to foot, and what on earth should I do now? It was only when I heard the rapidly increasing sound of naked feet in the snow that I dove back into the tent, feverishly closing the zipper behind me. I don't know how long I